Friends and colleagues, welcome to our live office hours. If we have never met, my name is Nikki from Full Voice Music. I am so honored that you are here. Thank you for coming in. So many of my friends and colleagues are here with us live. And if you're watching this on the replay on YouTube, hello from Nova Scotia, Canada. And my partner and longtime friend and colleague, Mim Adams, is joining you from Costa Rica because she loves to go surfing. And the beautiful thing about Full Voice Music is our team works in 5 different time zones, so it doesn't matter where you're zooming in from. So today, oh my goodness, live office hours number 13. We are talking about lesson pacing. And my friends, this we had over 80 people sign up. We had 74 questions about lesson pacing. Now, fear not, a lot of them were repeated questions, so I was able to organize it into the presentation. But a lot of really great questions. Before we get started, I'm just going to introduce Full Voice Music. So my name's Nikki, and if you're new to Full Voice Music, we are a very small but incredibly fierce Canadian education music company. We specialize in vocal music and teaching resources for young singing students. And one of our platforms and one of the things that we love to do is teacher training, pedagogy, sharing pedagogy. We have our podcast that comes out once a month. We have blogs. We do lots of sharing of information, and our live office hours has been one of the fun things that we've started doing in the last year. And we're really enjoying it. We've teachers from around the world. If you are new and you missed some of our topics, we've had some amazing topics. We've also had some amazing guests. So we've had Donna Rodenizer come in, talk about singing games and activities. We've had Dr. Ginevra Williams come in to talk about voice change. So many great topics, and if you would like to see those presentations, they are on our YouTube channel, Full Voice Music. I also want to tell you that there's prizes. We always want to share the love. Our prizes today, you can choose. We have 2 online courses that are available. The first one is Voice Growth and Change in Kids and Teens with Dr. Ginevra Williams. If you are working with tweens and teens going through voice change and you would like to deep dive into that, that's a wonderful 90-minute presentation. And if you are needing some inspiration about play-based learning, engagement, and lesson pacing, now we'll be covering some of it today, but that is a super quick and dirty dive into what you need to know about engaging lessons using play-based learning. And that is a 45-minute presentation. In under an hour, you can level up your engagement. Yay! So if you are one of our draw winners at the end of the presentation, you can choose between which course would serve you best. Now, I want to start the presentation with a very important statement and a very important reminder. And I don't know who needs to hear this. You are doing a great job. My friends, from the bottom of my heart, the world is heavy right now. Today is election day in Canada, and I am a hot mess. Holding space for people, helping them discover their voices, creating a space that is about them and their learning journey is probably one of the most important things that we can do on this planet right now. So I hope that you can find time to celebrate your work and to celebrate your students and know that it is so, so important. So I usually end the presentation with this, but I'm going to start with it because I want people to know if you are asking questions, if you are investing in professional development, if you are always trying to improve your teaching and your teaching skills, you are an exceptional teacher. And I honor and I celebrate you. But let's deep dive into our topic for today, which is lesson pacing. And the first thing that's important to recognize is that lesson pacing is a learned skill. There's a wonderful saying, you don't learn the ropes until you're up against the ropes. You don't learn lesson pacing unless you're in the thick of it, if you are in the trenches. It doesn't come naturally to anyone. And even if you've been teaching for years, you can have a student that kind of comes in and it's hard to make that connection, or there's information maybe that you're missing. So keep in mind, if you're new to teaching, lesson pacing develops with experience, but most importantly, reflection, being able to, go over how things are going. But the biggest thing, in my opinion, is a willingness to be adaptable, willingness to be flexible. A lesson plan is a checklist of things to do. Lesson pacing is how you allow the student to move through, how you guide them, what their experience is for them. Now, a lot of you asked a lot of questions about lesson pacing and engagement, and I'm really happy for this because they go hand in hand. You cannot have one without the other. If your lesson pacing is off, it's going to affect your engagement. And without engagement and students being involved, it's going to redirect your lesson pacing. So this is so important when we are thinking about lesson pacing. And one of the biggest misconceptions that's really challenging, because all of us probably had super serious voice lessons. Engagement is not compliance. Engagement. So a lot of teachers will ask, well, I'm having a hard time keeping my students engaged. So it's important to know that engagement is not just a student that stands by the piano and does what they're told. It's not paying attention or even staying on task. Engagement is the genuine level of curiosity, excitement, motivation. They're asking questions. They're participating. They want to be there. Engagement, teacher truth bomb, is on us. We are responsible for engagement. We bring the activities, we bring the energy, we see that student, we try to make the connections. Engagement falls in, it's our responsibility when we are pacing and working our lessons. Now I have a little activity for everybody. So if you have a piece of paper there, great. If not, try to keep this in your head. So I want you to think about a student. Any student, maybe it's the student, a new student that's just started. Maybe it's that student. Do you want to think about that? You know who I'm talking about. Because I want to talk about teaching through observation. So engagement. How do we connect? How do we bring the engagement to the lesson? So teaching through observation is the heart of teaching. And teaching through observation in the voice studio is far more than just assessing vocal ability. So we have these very trained ears, and we're trying to find the things that need to be fixed. But the conversations more and more are about teaching the whole person, because we know that our voices are hardwired into everything else going on in our bodies. So I have some questions about that student. So the student that you're thinking about. So teaching through observation, these are some questions that help us to bring the student to the forefront. So question number 1, in your teaching studio, what singing or music activities do they love? What activity do they look forward to? They light up. They want to do it over and over again. So that's question number 1. Question number 2 are, what are some things that they talk about? what makes that human an interesting person? What makes them unique? What lights them up? Not necessarily musically speaking, but what do they like to talk about? Are they into sports? Do they have a cat? Right? Do they like school? Do they not like school? Question number 3, when in your studio are they most successful? When do they do things really well and feel really confident about themselves? And then question number 4 is, when do they smile and laugh? These are 4 simple questions that help us to teach through observation. It allows us to adjust our activities, our exercises. It allows us to personalize things in simple ways, which makes a lifetime of difference. So, for example, my little student, Olive, adores cats, and every day she would come in, and every shirt, every sweatshirt, sometimes they were sparkly, sometimes they always had cats on them. She loved to talk about cats. So when Olive was having a bad day, I said to her one day, "It sounds like you're having a bad day today. I have a really interesting idea. Why don't we meow your exercise?" So we were working on a scale. That simple modification and personalization immediately brought her back into the room. I saw a smile. I saw engagement. And if you think meowing a scale is easy, it is not. Go ahead, you're all muted. Meow that scale. There is a great warm-up in meowing a scale. So when we know more things about our students and we're more centered around them, engagement gets easier and easier and easier. Now, I want to start addressing some of the questions, and they were good questions. A lot of people were asking, well, how much should I try to put in that half-hour lesson? Many teachers are teaching 30-minute lessons. I taught for decades 30-minute lessons. This is a really important question, and I want to go to some basic lesson pacing best practices. So lesson pacing is not about speed or quantity. So often we try to put a lot into our short lessons because we have big hearts. We want to make sure people know how valuable our lessons are and how wonderful music is. So we try to cram it full of so many things. Really effective lesson pacing is how the student is guided through that experience. And it's so important. And we just had our practice, progress, and success workshop last night. One of the reasons why students struggle with home practice is because our lesson pacing is too much. We put too much into the lesson and they get overwhelmed and they don't even know where to start. So here's some best practices. We need to simplify our lesson plans so that there is in-lesson time for student participation. I know that sounds obvious, but it's not. We want to lecture them about all the things and tell them all the fantastic things and talk about the muscles and the diaphragm and all of the things we know. But really what we need to do is let them try the exercise, let them sing the song. And here is a teacher challenge. I hope if you're teaching this week, I want you to try this. Allow for a minimum of 3 repetitions before you even say a word. What usually happens is that they will self-correct on the 2nd or 3rd attempt without you having to stop them and tell them that they did something wrong and they need to fix things, which brings a lot more energy into the lesson and helps to build their confidence. We need to let them get into their bodies and have a couple goes at the can before we start to put in corrections. And again, one of those challenges in smaller lessons and shorter lessons is we want to fix all the things. Our students aren't broken. They need to be given opportunities to do the things that we're asking them to do. I would even recommend this with songs. let them sing the song at least a couple of times and then ask them what they liked about it and let them do it again. Because again, you'll see a different performance the second time and the third time. Then start to put in some information for them. The other thing that we need in well-paced lessons is teacher-guided review. So while we might feel really productive by introducing new concepts each and every week, adding on, learning is not A to B, and we need to constantly be cycling back and allowing them to explore those concepts over and over and over. And students, adults, tweens, teens, everyone, they need more review than you think. I find especially with teenagers, but like even adults, they're con artists. They won't tell us when they're struggling. And they rarely ask for help. And if you ask them, everything is fine. But if you give them the opportunity to review something, you'll notice how much they appreciate it. So best practices for really effective lesson pacing have to do with allowing the students to do more of the things. So less talking, more singing, and to review with you in the studio and let them sing that song a few more times or sing the same exercise a few more times. Now, I love this question. Somebody asked, how do I get a good structure to the lesson? I feel that I'm all over the place. Now, I want to address this by saying it might not be a bad thing that you feel that you're all over the place, because to me, that reads like you're paying attention to what your students need. So effective lesson pacing is about what the student needs, not necessarily what you want to put into the lesson. So it's quite normal for your idea of a lesson plan to kind of be sabotaged, right? Okay, raise your digital hand. How many times have you had a lesson plan ready and you've got to do this, this, and this, and then the student comes in, they go, I have to audition for the school musical tomorrow. I can't tell you how many times that. Mim is like, yes. Yep, Tracy says that happened to me, Or students come in, Lynn says, absolutely. Students come in and they're just getting over a cold, right? And singing the whole lesson, right? So, or like what a lot of people were asking about, when you're getting ready for a performance, do you do the same activities in the lesson if you've got a performance coming up? And the question is no. If you got a performance coming up, you might want to switch up your lesson pacing and what you're focusing on. That's perfectly normal. Everybody's like, yes, so many last minute auditions. Why? Voice teachers are the last people to know, and it's the school's fault. Amen. That's right, it is. Those schools with their auditions. Now, going back to a good structure, I think, again, simplifying a general form to your lessons. So if you're doing a 30-minute lesson, 10 minutes might be for like vocal warm-ups, vocal exercises. Maybe 10, 15 minutes would be for repertoire development. And then maybe you have some music theory. You can generalize a flow to your lessons, but you still want to be flexible for what the student needs. Now, we had a lot of questions about how much time should I spend on vocal technique and warm-ups? And then the other question, which I love, is it acceptable to skip warm-ups when a student arrives late, especially if they were preparing for an exam? So I want to, Dr. Ginevra Williams just did her children's vocal health workshop a few weeks ago, and she addresses this. And the first thing that I want to share with people is in a lesson with beginners of any age, I'm including adults here, an effective warm-up, air quotes or quotes, is any activity that the student enjoys, makes them feel confident. It gets them into your space, your studio, helps them regulate and become ready to learn. That might not be a vocal warm-up. Quite often, students come in and they might actually not feel like using their voice right away, or they need something to get them into using their voice, especially students with anxiety, vocalizing might not be the first step for them. So a vocal or warm-up doesn't necessarily have to be about the voice. And honestly, the one thing that I often do is I try to get them into movement, like gentle movement, stretching. One of my favorite ones for my kiddos was getting them to draw a body-size treble clef with their hands. Those were really good. Try to do it slowly. Try to do it fast. Get them into their bodies. We would do stuff like that before we did an actual vocal warm-up. And yes, the one thing that Geneva brought up in her workshop, her vocal health for children workshop, is that if children are using their voice, or if anybody is using their voice all day long, they don't necessarily need a traditional vocal warm-up. Maybe the warm-up gets them into the higher and lower areas of their voices, but we don't need to spend extended time here. And it can be as simple as singing part of a song or using a song for a warm-up. So yes, you can skip warm-ups. You can do different things for warm-ups. And again, if you're teaching to that student, you'll recognize when a warm-up, vocal warm-up, might not be the best place to start. And that's important. Now, I wanted to share, I'm still working on this graph. I wanted to just share that there's so much overlap between technical exercises, warm-ups, and song study that you can use any of these things in a multitude of ways. A song study could be looking at vocal technique, right? You could use vocal warm-ups and insert some ear training in there. You can have technical exercises that are also theory exercise. Like everything overlaps. So while 30 minutes might not be an ideal time, or it's a short time, we can be creative with the activities that we use, and they can be used in many different ways. And I'm still working on this graphic, so I'm still thinking about the things in here. I'm going to use it for a post on our socials soon. Now, another question. Tracy says she loves the graphic. Thank you. I'm working on it. How often should I introduce new songs? This is a great question. As a voice professional, you kind of have to learn a song, and you're trying to make it performance ready, right? If I'm learning a song and I've got, whether I'm singing in the studio or performing it, we're working towards performance ready. With our beginners, I think it's important we all understand that our singers need a variety of music, different genres, different styles, different types of songs in order to discover their voice, in order to develop their skills. So I like to think of songs as different songs for different purposes. So again, going back to that little graphic, simple songs can be used for a warm-up. A well-rehearsed simple song is a wonderful opportunity to explore vocal technique. Some songs are really good for learning to follow the score or learning to read music. We put a lot of thought into that for our song downloads. So as much as it's a fun song to sing, there's also some musical concepts that we're trying to help introduce to our young singers. And yes, of course, you have songs for performances. So those songs probably will take a lot longer to get to a performance level. And I think it's super important to have songs for fun, just songs they love to sing. And maybe you work on a song for fun for a while, and then maybe you focus on something else, but then you bring songs back in. So I don't think it needs to be a one and done type of pacing or a type of lesson. That's something that often happens in the beginner piano, right? We're working through the 2-page spread, and we assign the 2 songs, and then we flip the page and we learn 2 more songs and we flip the page. it's so good to go back and review those songs. So again, you can be flexible. You can have different songs for different purposes. And when your students have a collection of songs that they know and love, then you give them choice. So important. With my Zoom lessons, quite often our warm-up was the song they wanted to sing the most, the song that's going to make you smile, and then they would choose the song that they wanted to sing. Usually it was Dark and Dingy by Glyn. That was a favorite song for so many of my students. Now, this question again came up with the 30 minutes. How do you manage really digging into repertoire and theory and sight reading? And the answer is you don't. You can only do small little packages of information. And guess what? That's okay. That's actually pretty wonderful because that's how brains learn best. We introduce a concept and then we come back to it and we come back to it again and we come back to it. So while you might not be able to deep dive into it, I think a lot of teachers' expectations has to do with practicing where we introduce a concept and our hope is that it goes home and is solidified. That is not a realistic expectation with beginners, young beginners. They don't have those independent study skills. So it's, again, realistic expectations for slower progress and having those little micro wins along the way is a much friendlier approach. And it takes the pressure off of teachers that are trying to see faster progress. So progress isn't about speed. It's not about how fast your students make progress. This is a great question. We get asked this a lot, and I am happy to clarify this. So how much of a full voice lesson should I expect to complete in a 30-minute lesson? So if you're new to full voice workbooks, they're a 2-page spread, like one full voice lesson, being air quotes, is a 2-page spread. Now, Mim and I were in the trenches teaching half-hour lessons when we developed these books, and we wanted it to be a flexible resource for teachers. So we designed it that everything was broken into little sections. And it is not necessary to do the entire 2-page spread. In fact, I rarely ever got through an entire lesson. Like, rarely. So I want to take you through a little bit of lesson pacing with this exercise. Now, I happen to love lesson 12 because I love exercises that use articulation. Staccato, legato types of exercises rock my world, and I just have so much fun with them. So this is how I would pace it. I would focus on the first little section. We'd talk about staccato, talk about their day. We would talk about a little bit of theory. What's the difference between dots and a dotted half note? Because they've just learned the dotted half note. I would get them to sing the following exercise where we do 5 notes going up staccato, 5 notes going down, 4 notes going up, 5 notes going down. And we would just play around with it. And I might go up and down for a little bit. And I might say, what happens if we switch it up? What if we did legato going up and staccato going down? And we would switch it up. And that might take maybe 5 minutes. And then what I would do is would you use the piano? Ooh, yes and no. I would try it probably with the piano first, but I always like to try things without the piano. That's a great question. Doesn't have to be with the piano. Depends on the student. Depends on my mood. If I was doing it online, I wouldn't. I would sing it for them and then they would sing it back for me. But after the 5 minutes or so, I would close their full voice workbook, and then I would probably move into their repertoire where I would try to find an opportunity to bring in the discussion about articulation. So if it was a Taylor Swift song, I'd say, hey, I wonder if Taylor Swift is using any staccato or legato phrases in this song. So taking the information from here and bringing it into the repertoire solidifies understanding. And then if we're working on a conservatory piece, I'd say, you know what would be kind of neat to try? What if we sang this phrase, even though it's not written, what if we sang this phrase with staccato dots? Let's just do it for fun. And then we would talk about it. Would that work in the song? So again, there's a lot of exploration and time spent with one concept rather than trying to go through all of it and just check off the boxes. Now, to further the lesson pacing the next week, I would open up the book. I would go back to lesson 12, the information about staccato. We would review it. We might sing the exercise again. And then I would move into maybe the sight singing. And one of my favorite things to do, again, giving choice is always important. I would say to my student, all right, we need to do some sight singing. Do you want to do A or do you want to do B? And I would let them choose. And we would do one of them. And I'd get them to circle the one they did. We'd answer the questions. We'd sight sing it. And then we'd move on. That is mindful teaching, where you're taking one concept and then you're applying it in different places in your lesson, trying to put it all together, rolling it all together so that it's not just an information dump of this is here and here's some sight hanging. Oh, here's some ear training. Oh, and by the way, do that for homework. And that's where I want to remind everybody that I never, ever, 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 ever think we should be assigning this for homework. For most of our singers, this is introductory information. It's new. So two things will happen. You assign it for homework. One, they won't do it. Two, they'll do it on the car on the way to your lesson. It'll be all scribbly and they'll do it wrong. And you're going to spend more time in the lesson correcting their mistakes. Take your time. You don't have to complete an entire lesson. You can take one section and you can move on. So I hope that gives people some courage and some freedom to just slow down. Now, I love this next question, and I love the honesty here. I cannot teach a 30-minute lesson. Good for you. I love this. I've tried. I've followed my plans, other lesson plans, watched videos, tried 8 million different things. It feels too rushed, that not enough was taught, and woe to the bathroom breaks. Oh my goodness. When I saw this, I was like, amen, hallelujah. And also, I have been there. I have been there. You know, you're actually waiting. You want your students to show up late so you can shove some food in your mouth or go to the bathroom. Yes. I would like people to know that if you are running your own studio, and again, if you're working for somebody else, you might not have the ability to do this, but you are the driver of your bus. You can create a teaching studio and structure your lessons with intention. You do not have to offer 30-minute lessons, and many teachers have moved away from the 30-lesson model, 30-minute lesson model. I got rid of 30-minute lessons probably over a decade ago, and my biggest regret is that I waited too long to do it. I felt exactly like this person. I felt like I was rushing. I couldn't get things in. If students missed a week, it was like we didn't do it. It was so frustrating. I also ended up with some health issues because I did have a half-hour lesson break, but I would then put makeup lessons in my dinner break, and I'd sit there shoving food in my mouth, playing exercises on the piano, thinking that I was a really awesome person. But what I ended up doing is giving myself digestive problems and stomach problems because I just wasn't eating properly. And I think teachers are guilty of that. So if you are running your own studio and you know you are going to serve people better with a 45-minute lesson, an hour lesson, then this is actually a good time in the year. You could start thinking about rewriting policies, giving parents a heads up, and maybe in September you offer a different type of lesson experience for your studio. Now, other teachers love half hours. They like the high turnover. Benefits of teaching less students with longer lessons, less students, less emails, shorter recitals, less administrative time, less parents to deal with. There's a lot of benefits to it, but you will have to communicate to families exactly why you are doing this and what it's going to look like, and yes, what the price increase will be. And I know people are always worried about students quitting. When I switched, I lost one student. And parents were a little not sure about it in the beginning. Oh, well, we don't know. But I explained to them, we can do so much more in that extra 15 minutes. It really does make for a more comprehensive lesson. And the student that I lost was probably going to leave for other reasons anyhow. So if the 30-minute lesson is not serving you, then reconsider what it might look like, what you might offer, how you might improve your services, and then start to think about how you want to communicate that. This was the other question that came in. When should a student transition to a longer lesson? Probably not going to like my answer, but here it is. When you have a bigger teaching toolbox. It's not about when they are ready. It's when you pace a lesson that is appropriate for that student in that time frame. So if you have, you might need more fun singing games. You might need a bigger repertoire with some folk songs and short songs, but it's really up to you. I know a lot of teachers will say things like children can only handle shorter lessons. And I know some people teach like 20 minutes. They're like, well, if they're under this age, they only get 20 minutes. That just to me reads like we don't have enough things to do with them. Let me help you with that. Go to my website, read a couple of the blogs, download a bunch of the free stuff, and you can have some pretty incredible lessons. So there isn't really an age when you can give them a larger lesson. It's when you want to give them and when you're ready to give them a longer lesson. Now, going into the play-based learning, I'm looking for new ideas for younger students to keep it fun, but still efficient. And the other question was, when all my private lesson students want to play games, how can I keep our 30-minute private lesson productive and engaging? This is a very common teacher misconception. Play-based learning is powerful. Fun is productivity, and games is exactly how we learn. So I know a lot of teachers feel like the warm-up can be all goofy and stuff, but then we got to get to serious business. You can have fun throughout the entire lesson and know that you are giving them top value for their time. It's not and society that it's not, those beliefs that play is not engaging is really common. We think that it's kind of this frivolous time wasting thing, and then we have to get to serious learning. On our podcast, Ginevra does I don't remember which number it is, but Ginevra, we have an episode called Happy Hormones for Learning. And it talks about the neuroscience of how we need to be in good spirits and happy and enjoying ourselves for those neural pathways to be created. Mim's probably going to look up what podcast that was. Thank you, Mim. It's a really interesting interview. And the neuroscience is all there. It's all, there's so many studies on this. Somewhere I saw white papers about play-based learning that was sponsored by the Lego company. Not the Lego. They have like a charitable research department. I'll send it out. I'll send it later, but it's really interesting. So do not feel that you have to, thank you. Mim has put the Happy Hormones for Learning link in the chat there. please don't think that you're wasting time when your students are having fun. If they are smiling and laughing and singing, they are going to take home more than you can possibly imagine. This is a really good question. How to end a lesson without feeling rushed to get them out for the next student. Oh my goodness, yes. And it's funny too, right? Because, students sometimes come in, we need to get them settled, they need to become regulated, and then they start to feel really comfortable and safe, and then they don't want to go. So I used to have this with my small group class, my singing class. Trying to get them out of my studio was so difficult. And I would always end up being a few minutes late going into my next student's lesson. So my solution was just to move my next student's lesson 15 minutes. But you can't do that if you're doing 30, 30, 30 or 45 or whatever. It's important, especially for young children, for them to kind of have a schedule. And my recommendation for this is when you, whatever your last activity is, you give them a heads up. So you say, all right, you know what? We're going to wrap things up by doing this, and then we're going to get ready to go. So it's very helpful for students. And by the way, I've had adults that I've also had to do this with. Again, they kind of warm up, and then they get comfy, and then they want to chit chat with you. So being firm but kind. All right, this is great. We've had a great lesson. We need to do one more thing. What would it like to be? Maybe you give them choice, or we're going to do our song one more time with the backing track, and we're going to do a performance, and then we're going to go. So I would give them at least a good 5 minutes. You might even want to kind of give them, all right, we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this, and then it's home, and then you remind them again, okay, now we're going to wrap up, we're going to finish here, and then we're going to move on. So that helps them transition and switch. And remember, there's a lot of cognitive flexibility here, asking people to switch from one activity to another, especially children, can take you, you might need to walk them through that. I love this. What tips do you have to fit enough content and singing into a lesson while still allowing time for communicating and or writing down for the student parent what to work on for the next lesson? So, keep in mind that sometimes the notes we need to keep for us may not serve the notes we need to keep for families. So I would simplify. So one task to be done at home, one task. You do not need to write down all the little details. You need to say, I would like you to sing this song at home with your backing track. And what are you going to focus on? And again, the student can have some agency here, and maybe they can, well, I don't know, and maybe diction. Okay, yes, I'll focus on the diction. I think a lot of this is about simplifying. And I think it is not necessary as a parent. I despise those long emails. It's a trigger for me. It sends me to Rage Town. When the Baseball Association sends me this War and Peace novel with all of the new rules, I don't read it. And I ask my husband, I'm like, did you read that email? Because I'm too busy to read that email. So keep it simple. Keep it simple. One thing to do, maybe a simple reminder, but it really isn't necessary to document every little thing that you did. I personally don't think that it's helpful. The more you can simplify it, the more chances that it will be done and accomplished at home. Now, I wanted to let everybody know that if you Deb says your practice journal. Thank you. Yes, we do have, and somebody asked about practice journals. Thank you for bringing that up. Somebody asked, when do you introduce practice journals or keeping a chart or keeping a log? That's a really interesting question because we have a generation of students that aren't as geared up to write things down as maybe you or I might be. I don't want to assume anybody's ages here. I love writing things down and I love journaling. I love that. But I've had some of my students not that interested in it, and it became something that I had to police in my lessons. Now, we introduced the the singing lesson practice planner and journals, and they were developed for our little ones. And they have really simple pages where it's one line and there's three things. So you have to new, so what's new, something that we did new, and then what we have to review, which is one line, and then what we have to remember, and it's a little box for the student to write in. If journals and writing and getting your students to write in a lesson is something that you would like to do, those journals are really well. So they're the singing lesson practice planners and agendas, or journals, not agendas, journals. And they're all cute. They're like space cats and pretty itty bitty kitty unicorn. And there's birds and dogs, and they're very colorful and they're very fun. Mim just put a link to them. And I think they're on sale now on the website. I think they are. But journals are an option. But you keep in mind that journals you're going to have to teach your students and guide your students and motivate your students to use them. Erin says, I like to use them with my small group class. So here's the fun thing. We actually developed the journals with my small group class. So the kids told me what they wanted and what were the important things. And you know what? Kids are super smart. I mean, that's basically what Full Voice is. We just ask kids what they really, really like, and then we publish it. That's the secret sauce to Full Voice music. Mim's laughing, but it's true. My student Ruby was the one who was like, well, I would like a list of all the songs I'm thinking about singing. And I'm like, done. Ruby, good one. Anyhow, so yes, the lesson planners, I would use those if I was doing a small group class of littles, like say 5, 6, 7. I would use the planners instead of using introductory workbook because they're not ready. If they're not quite ready for that at really young ages. Oh, Kelda says, I write in the journals myself. Yes, because it would take the whole lesson. You are correct, friend. But have them look at it and color something or mark something. Yes, of course. Absolutely, yes. That's actually a teaching strategy. I think it was my assistant Heidi that told me about that. Lesson pacing. Here's a really solid teaching tip about lesson pacing. The speed at which students can write answers. So if they need more time, more cognitive processing time to write, like say if they're just writing do, re, mi, that's a very good sign that you need to slow down lesson pacing. They need more processing time. So paying attention to how they are writing, how much time they need to write, how much time they need to think about an answer, all of that cognitive processing time needs to be accommodated. Nothing can stress a child out more, or an adult, tween, teen, anyone more, is if we are constantly rushing them to come up with answers. So cognitive processing time, how long it takes to write, is a wonderful check-in for lesson pacing. Deb says, me too. They fill the bottom though. Yes, that little box. Yes, I love that. I have pictures of some of the cutest things they've said. Remember not to be afraid to sing for people. I love that one. Remember to say the words clearly. Cat. With the biggest T written at the end. Yes. For those of you who are interested in deep diving into play-based learning with videos of me working with the kids, showing games and activities, our play-based learning engagement and lesson pacing course, which is 45 minutes, an hour if you do the quiz at the end, is on sale now until May 1st. It's 25% off. And I don't do math in public, but I think that comes to around $50 something. So it's on sale because there were a lot of questions about engagement. Now, I have talked a long time. Does anybody have any other questions? I'm going to stop my share before we go to our draw. Does anybody have any other questions about lesson pacing? And you can put it in the chat if you would like to remain anonymous. Although I'll probably mess up and say your name out loud because that's what I do every single time. So I'll try to not do that. Any other questions about lesson pacing? From a scale, I have one question. What's one thing you're going to try this week? Put it in the chat. One thing, one new thing you're going to try this week with your students in regards to lesson pacing. Put that in the chat. I would love to get some feedback. Now, while you're doing that, I'm going to go back to my share. Actually, Lynn, review. Oh, yay. Oh, allowing 3 reps. I'm going to do one portion of full voice and review. My heart is so full. Thank you. All right. 3 reps. That's a good one. You are going to be surprised. Oh, the gentle movement with the treble clef. Yes. Drawing a treble clef with your whole body. I always start them small. So I say, okay, let's do a little treble clef, and then a half body treble clef. And then you make them bend over right to the bottom to their feet, go all the way over their head and draw a treble clef. That makes them so happy. Simple. All right. We have prizes, more choice. So triple treble. Yes, a triple treble. More student choice. Amen. Amen to student-led teaching. Oh my goodness. Wait till you see how they respond to that. So beautiful. So my friends, I hope that you have some really valuable takeaways and some inspiration to go back into your studios this week. Maybe give some space to your students, maybe have some more fun, slow things down, and know that lesson pacing is different every week for every person, and that you are doing a great job, all of you. Oh, here's a question for this workshop if you're still taking questions. Of course, I can talk all day about singing. Feeling a bit overwhelmed with a student that has a recital and an audition. How do I fit in everything so they can feel most prepared? Well, first of all, should I offer extra lessons? I mean, only offer extra lessons if they're paying for them, right? So you should not be giving your time. I would say 2 things to this. One, if you're working on recitals and auditions, then you are working on repertoire. So the warm-up is the song, the technical study is the song that they're singing, and then performance skills. So again, simplify your lesson pacing to just work on those songs. I would also check in to make sure that they have all the tools that they need to be practicing at home. So the backing track, or if they're struggling anyway. But I think that, I think, again, keeping it simple, just working on performance for a little while. Whenever it was recital or exam or performance time, I didn't do any sight singing. I didn't spend a lot of time on warm-ups, and I left a lot of things for after the recitals were over. I don't know if that helps, Rebecca, but the other thing that I used to do around performance time is I did include like a group rehearsal. so the kids had an opportunity to sing for each other. But again, those fees were covered in my tuition. So how do I let you know which choice I would like for the draw again? Oh, Joyce, you're going to email me at nikki@fullvoicemusic.com. Oh, I did it all capitals. I'm not yelling at you. fullvoicemusic.com. So yeah, send me an email and then let me know which one you want. Rebecca, I don't know if that helps you, but yeah, and also be kind to yourself. We can only do so much. We can only do so much. And you know, our students have to pick up the slack. So be kind to yourself. Lynn is off to teach. Many of you probably have to go teach. I want to give everybody a big hug. We love all our friends in the U.S., and no billionaires are going to make me think elsewise. We are always here for you. And I am wishing everybody, as always, from the bottom of my heart, inspired teaching and happy singing, and big hugs to everybody wherever you are. Keep doing the important work. All right. Have a wonderful afternoon, everyone. And we'll see you next time, hopefully at our next live office hours. Have a great afternoon, everyone.